Shalom, shalom, giving all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushua, Ba'ashem Kakadash, double honors to the apostles and the elders of GMS that rule and teach well in scripture, and salutations to my Akim that are doing this work in truth and faith and in all sincerity. Today's lesson is basically going to be about the current system that we have now will be taken away. So, that current system that we have that's being taken away right now, there's going to be a new system that follows after the old system is taken away. And that new system that they're trying to roll out is called the Fed now. It's just one step closer to that mark. And so this is a skit, just letting you know that we're encroaching upon prophecy. Okay, fast and fast every day is a step closer towards prophecy. And this is just a little explanation as to what the new system is going to be. But, you gotta chew the meat and spit out the bones, so to speak. Okay, that means deciphering real truth between that and their ultimate agenda versus what they're showing you at face value.
Central bank digital currencies. What's more concerning, however, is that most people don't seem to understand what FedNow is or how it works. This has resulted in genuine misinformation that has been used to discredit those who oppose it. That's why today I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about FedNow using information exclusively from the horse's mouth. As you'll soon see, the widespread concerns and opposition are justified. The history of FedNow begins in September 2013, when the Fed put out a public consultation paper asking financial institutions in the United States to give their input on how the payment system in the country should be improved. This public consultation resulted in the creation of the so-called Faster Payments Task Force in May 2015. In July 2017, the task force published its final report, which recommended that the Fed create a fast payment system. Go figure. If you watched our video about the future financial system that central banks want to see, you'll know that fast payment systems are analogous to central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. This is primarily because both payment systems are programmable, meaning that transactions can be controlled by a central authority. Now, in August 2019, the Fed finally announced its plans to create a fast payment system, which is of course called FedNow. The timing of this announcement is significant for many reasons, mainly because Facebook announced its digital currency project Libra in June 2019. Note that Libra finally died, largely unmourned, in early 2022. Another thing that happened in June 2019 was a partnership between the World Economic Forum, or WEF, and the UN to meet the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, in every country by 2030. For context, many of the dystopian things being pushed around the world have their roots in the SDGs, including CBDCs. 10 days after FedNow was announced, BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager, also published a report that effectively predicted how central banks and governments would respond to the pandemic. For context, BlackRock has a close relationship with the Fed. More about that report in the description. Coincidences aside, the Fed revealed the features of FedNow in August 2020. The video announcing FedNow's features can be found on the Federal Reserve Bank Services YouTube channel. It is the source for everything I just said, minus the WEF, UN, and BlackRock stuff. It's worth a watch if you have the time. Now, in the video, it's revealed that former Fed Governor Lael Brainard has been at the forefront of the Fed's efforts to develop new payment systems. For context, Lael became a Fed governor in June 2014. As such, there's a high chance she was a key player in the FedNow initiative from the beginning. Oddly enough, Lael resigned from the Fed in February this year to become the head of the United States Economic Council under President Joe Biden. It's not clear why Lael left the Fed. Her term as vice chair was only set to expire in 3 years' time. Some have speculated that it was somehow related to FedNow. In any case, what is clear is that the Boston branch of the Fed was tasked with creating FedNow. This was done under the supervision of Ken Montgomery, the first vice president of the Boston Fed. The other key players in FedNow's development can be seen here, but I should note that it was the work of a 100-person team. I should also note that the features of FedNow were developed with the help of major financial institutions in the US. These are referred to as the FedNow community, and it boasts over 1,600 members. The FedNow community will also decide which features FedNow supports in the future. Now, in August last year, the Fed confirmed that it would be launching FedNow in about the middle of this year. In March this year, the Fed announced it would be launching FedNow in July. The announcement was made just a couple of days after the banking crisis began. Another coincidence, I'm sure. Anyways, there are two things to keep in mind before we explain how FedNow works. The first is that the Fed had not set a launch date at the time of shooting, so it's possible that FedNow has launched by the time you see this video. Be sure to check this if you haven't already. The second thing to keep in mind is that FedNow will be rolled out in phases. What's coming in July is just phase 1. As a result, the information in my explanation may be incomplete or incorrect if you're watching at a much later date. Unfortunately, it's not known when the next phase will be released. I'll come back to what features the Fed and the FedNow community want to see in the future phases of FedNow later in the video. Before that, let's take a look at what's under the hood. To keep things simple, I'll explain FedNow as if it were a cryptocurrency. You can think of FedNow as being a layer 0 blockchain similar to a crypto like Polkadot. This is because it only offers basic functionality and is use case agnostic. It's possible for financial institutions to build stuff on top of it. For now, FedNow's functionality will be limited to basic transactions, the ability to generate reports based on these transactions, the ability to set limits on transactions, the ability to set limits on accounts, and
Pay attention now. Set limits. So, just like what the elites mentioned and what they talked about when dealing with that interview with Alan Russo. He said that we'll just cut off your chip. And if your chip get cut off, you basically don't exist. So they'll have total control over what you can do and how you can do it if you're into this system.
and the ability to blacklist accounts. More on all that in a moment. Nodes on the FedNow network are US banks with a bank account at the Fed. These bank accounts are called master accounts, and basically every US bank has one. The Fed silently published a list of master account holders for the first time late last month. I'll leave it in the description if you're interested. Now, it's important to note that non-bank entities are not allowed to use FedNow directly. Non-bank entities can only access FedNow indirectly via banks with a master account. This appears to be the number one question asked by individuals and institutions alike. I repeat, only master accounts allowed. Logically then, every transaction made with FedNow ultimately involves moving money between master accounts. At the technical level, this involves sending messages between master accounts that funds have been sent or received. I'll leave a detailed explainer video in the description if you're interested. Now, what's fascinating is that FedNow uses the ISO 20022 standard for this. I say fascinating because multiple cryptocurrencies are compliant with the ISO 20022 messaging standard, the most famous of which is XRP. As a matter of fact, Ripple joined the ISO 20022 standards body in May 2020. This is circumstantial evidence to support the idea that the SEC sued Ripple in December 2020 because XRP was a direct competitor to FedNow. This is something we've speculated about a lot on the channel, particularly since the banking crisis. Many of the banks that recently went under had de facto fast payment systems too. Anyways, in contrast to existing payment rails, which only operate during banking hours, FedNow operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. FedNow also makes it possible to settle payments instantly rather than the 3 to 5 days offered by most existing payment rails. It's currently unknown how many transactions per second FedNow can process, but transaction finality takes, quote, a few seconds, and can apparently take as little as 1 second. However, some transactions can take as long as 20 seconds, which is the max timeout period. If a payment is not processed within the 20-second window, then you must try again. What's interesting is that this payment timeout clock could lead to issues if the internal time of the two banks involved is out of sync. Associated documents suggest that banks ensure they use a, quote, reliable time server. The 20-second timeout clock applies to all three participation types offered by FedNow to
Okay, right now that's part of just verbiage.
master account holders. You can think of participation type reports based on this information. This function is available to the other two node types as well. As you can see here, the cost per transaction is 4.5 cents for customer credit transfers and $1 for liquidity management transfers. These fees will presumably be shouldered by the financial institution you use to access FedNow, along with the monthly participation fee of $25 for all node types. But back to that ability to generate reports. Associated documents suggest that it will be possible for all FedNow nodes to generate transaction-level reports. This is extremely important to note because it suggests that there will be no privacy for FedNow users, regardless of the node type. On that note, we could not find a single mention of privacy anywhere in FedNow's documentation. Privacy was also not a point of discussion in any of the official FedNow videos we watched. This further underscores the possibility that FedNow users will have zero privacy. This is probably because of another problematic feature offered in the first phase of FedNow, which is fraud prevention. At inception, FedNow will make it possible for financial institutions to create reports about fraudulent transactions, set transaction limits for certain accounts, and blacklist certain accounts. What's frustrating is that the FedNow operations document published by the Fed in June does not reveal what signs of fraud financial institutions will be looking for. This does make sense considering they don't want fraudsters to game the system, but it could result in arbitrary account limiting and blacklisting. Although it will initially be up to financial institutions to decide who they write reports on, who they set transaction limits for, and who they blacklist, this could change in the future phases of FedNow. This is a truly terrifying possibility because it would give total control of your bank account to the Federal Reserve. This ties in to the future phases of FedNow, the roadmap in our crypto analogy. As I mentioned earlier, there are no timelines for when these phases will occur, nor what features will be included in them. I'll also remind you that it's the FedNow community that decides which features are added or removed. The features that could soon become a part of FedNow can be found in videos on the aforementioned Federal Reserve Bank Services YouTube channel. I say this because some of these features sound like conspiracy theories. I assure you they are not. Go and check for yourself if you have the time. First and foremost, Lael seemed to imply in that aforementioned feature release video that the end game of FedNow is to evolve it into a CBDC so that the US dollar can compete with China's CBDC. For now, however, the focus is on giving consumers and banks the services they want, namely fast payments. In that same video, another Fed official revealed that it will eventually become possible to set conditions under which a FedNow transaction would be automatically rejected. This involves tokenization, which FedNow will not support in its initial phase, but will support in unspecified future phases. Newsflash, but possible to set conditions means programmability, which is a key feature of CBDCs. Not only that, but the fact that FedNow will support tokenization could mean that real-world assets may become tokenized on its network. If this happens, you will own nothing. The Fed will own it instead. FedNow will also eventually support cross-border payments, in case you're wondering. Anywho, in a webinar from September 2020, one of FedNow's architects made a peculiar comment, and that's that banks with master accounts will, quote, initially have the option to join as a settlement node.
I closed it out. Revelation 13:16 calls us all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, and receive a mark either on the right hand or the forehead. So we're encroaching on that time to get the mark. Again, giving all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Hashem Yahushua, and double honors to the apostles and elders that rule and teach well, and salutations to the Akim out there that are making their bodies a living sacrifice, unto the kingdom. So with that, I say shalom.